Bring them in. Bring them in. Welcome into the week 2 edition of Workshop Wednesdays. Although it is Thursday, we're coming to you from the future. I am your host, Ben Hosler. I'm joined by Sam
Oh,
Sherman, the director of our projections here at DFSkarma.com. And we are here to break down the week 2 NFL DFS slate. We are going to shout out our sponsors, OwnersBox Fantasy. If you guys haven't seen, we have been absolutely crushing OwnersBox Lightning lineups. It's a new game format they have. They have regular DFS, Superflex. That's fun. We're going to talk about that on this podcast. But they have a new format called Lightning lineups where you don't have to compete against all the other users. You just compete against the OwnersBox projections. You spin, you get sets of players, and all you have to do is pick which player set you think is going to score the most fantasy points. Travis himself made over $8,000 over the weekend for NFL Week 1 doing so. If Travis can make $8,000, then anyone watching,
anyone,
anyone
anyone.
watching this video can absolutely print if Travis is making that money. So we're going to talk about OwnersBox Superflex throughout the podcast as well. As you can see on the sidebar there, head to ownersbox.online. Use promo code KARMA. It gets you a deposit match up to $500 and a free $10 entry into their big GPP for this week, $100,000 prize pool, 20K to first, and a free $10 entry into Lightning lineups as well. Sam, his internet seems better this week, so I'm excited.
Don't jinx it.
In true
Yeah,
Sam
don't jinx it.
fashion, he was traveling. Flight got delayed yesterday, so we're coming to you on Thursday. We're gonna go ahead and dive in here, Sam. I'm gonna kick it over to you. What's your thoughts just on the slate as a whole, and at the quarterback position? You can lead us off here. What guys are you targeting mainly?
Yeah, you and Matt were texting about it. I was saying, I don't think this is, I'm like, this is not breaking news, I guess, but this does seem like a week where you should always be paying attention to late swap, even though everyone's starting to say that, people still don't do it. But all these high power games that I think a lot of the chalk is going to form around are all late. And so I think it's going to cause a lot of, concentrated stuff in cash, but leaves a lot of opportunity in tournaments. And also if you're trailing to late swap. And for anyone, I assume most people know that. What I mean by that is if you're going to play, like I assume Saquon Barkley, who I in cash price should be like 40% owned or something, and you're getting dusted, you can easily just swap off him to someone else and give yourself a chance to win. For me in cash, I would say, I mean, it is crazy to think that it's like takes 1 week and a singular Devonte Adams, who's a god, to
Sorry, my microphone is cut out.
Yeah, I was gonna say your mic cut out, but we can hear you now. So,
How's it now?
yep, you're good.
But yeah, I like Trey Lance just as like given the rushing upside. I think he'll be the other option. I'm fine with Carr, but I think I would rather save the money and still get that rushing floor in cash. I think any of those top guys are fine, like Lamar or Kyler. They're just really expensive. But those are kind of the only two guys I'm really considering for cash. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, I think the cash conversation is probably between Derek Carr and Trey Lance. Typically, we kind of lean towards the rushing guy in cash games, but I don't know. Derek Carr at home against this just really bad secondary, really big team total. I mean, it's jumped up a couple points since open. And then you're probably going to want to play Devontae in cash if I had to guess. So it kind of just makes sense to pair him with Carr. But I do think that's the conversation for cash games. For tournaments, I think you can go a lot of different ways. Two guys that stuck out to me were Russell Wilson and Tua. So Wilson, I think in general, everyone watched that game, obviously Monday night, and there's like this negative connotation about the game because their coach is an idiot. But I mean, their offense was good. Their offense was moving the ball. They fumbled twice on the 1 yard line, which really hurt them. But I mean, he threw the ball a lot, and kind of similar to when we want to talk about stacking Cincy or Minnesota or someone like that, where we know the ball's going. We know where the ball's going to go when Russ throws. It's going to be Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy. So I think he's interesting. The Dolphins threw the ball a lot in Week 1, and similar situation, Tyreek and Waddle. That's where the ball's going. So those are two guys that stuck out to me, at least for tournaments. Who are some of like the pivots that you like at quarterback, maybe?
yeah, I like, as you know, I'm obsessed with Russ, so I automatically play him whether I talk about him or not. I mean, I was joking with you kind of last night. I don't know think I can actually get to Jared Goff, but like the spot is interesting. Uh it's a weird one where it's like I don't really want to play him, but I like a couple of his guys, so it kind of seems counterintuitive. I would say for me, I actually think the most interesting is Kyler, just because he's so expensive. I think he's normally overpriced. I think he's overpriced right now. But with how bad their defense looked, I know it's one game, and with how good Devontae Adams is just in life, it's hard to imagine that there's not, pushing the pace a little bit. And we know Kyler does have a massive ceiling and a decent rushing floor. But for me, I'll probably be pretty concentrated in terms of maybe paying up for Kyler. I do like Stafford. I think I was hoping people would be more reactionary to him kind of sucking, except when he's throwing to Cooper Cup last week. But the Atlanta D stinks, and the Rams just got blown out, and I think it's a pretty good spot. So those are the two I have from the top end. And then Carr, yeah, I mean, will you play Carr in tournaments?
I don't. I probably wouldn't, to be honest. If I don't,
Yeah,
I don't worry as much about ownership at quarterback just because it normally gets spread out. But if I'm playing him in cash, I don't make a lot of lineups. So say I make 3 lineups
yeah.
and I already have Carr in one, like I don't want to go with like 60% Derek Carr.
Hmm.
So I probably won't.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is interesting is Cooper Cup costs so much money. Like kind of coming into the week, I was like, you probably want to play him, but then the more like I sat down and looked at the salary, like it's so clear that people will play Adams over him, like in cash games. So I think if you want to get Cooper Cup in your lineup, I think something that could be interesting is using Marcus Mariota and then using Cup on like the opposite side. Because I actually like I don't think Marcus Mariota is a bad quarterback, especially for fantasy. Like people were so down
Me
on him
neither.
like coming into the season, but he played good in week 1. And I think he could have a good game, and you can stack him with Pitts or with Drake London. Like that's another team that you kind of know where the ball's gonna go. So if you want
Hmm.
like if you're playing like the Millie Maker or something, I think you could look at maybe Marcus Mariota. But
I totally agree. I mean, yeah, I think he's a better option. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's like, is he really? I would say I would prefer him to someone like Matt Ryan at the same price. I
yeah,
never play Tua, but I would probably prefer him to Tua as well.
yeah, I could see that just because there is the threat that he runs a little bit. Like he's not gonna go get like probably 40 rushing yards, but he could run a touchdown in if they're close. I think for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him when he came in with those random things last year for Vegas. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll move over to quarterback. Obviously, or we'll move over to running back. We're obviously gonna talk some stacks at the end here, but I think at running back, the cash game pool seems pretty like small to me. I think you're looking at Saquon and Joe Mixon, and then you're looking at Leonard Fournette and Darrell Henderson. I think that's kind of like the 4 guys, which sounds pretty crazy to say that like Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey aren't in the cash pool. I think you can play them in cash if you want, but I don't think that's going to be the popular lineup build this week, especially with people wanting to get to Adams or some of these receivers. So I think that's more of like spend up to be contrarian maybe in like single entry or small field. But cash, I think you're looking at Barkley, Mixon, Henderson, Fournette, those 4 guys. Um, do you disagree with that, or is that like the cash game pool for you as well?
No, no, I totally agree. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty concentrated.
Yeah. So I think the conversation at running back becomes tournament plays or just what guys you want to play from that in cash. But I think for tournaments, we didn't talk about injuries at the start. I don't want to like go through everyone that's out on the slate because most people watching this, especially late in the week, they know who's out. But there is conversations about guys that are questionable. One of which is DeAndre Swift. I don't think he really affects things at the running back position because Jamal Williams is priced up because he scored 2 touchdowns last week. So you're not
So
just gonna like
annoying.
yeah,
So
you're not just going to
annoying.
play Jamal Williams if Swift's out, but I do think he could affect maybe some of the Detroit receivers. But outside of that, I think Swift is interesting in tournaments. I think Antonio Gibson is interesting in tournaments. In one of the higher over-unders on the slate, I don't know why everyone hates. Last year, everyone loved Antonio Gibson, and now everyone hates him because the Washington Commanders do for whatever reason. But they gave him 8 targets last week, which was a career high. It's like Ron Rivera just discovered that he played receiver in college and started throwing him the football. Um, and that game is
Yeah.
good. So I think Antonio Gibson is definitely interesting for tournaments. There's some other guys too, but who do you like outside of like the cash pool at running back?
So it's always tough for me to play him, but I do have a lot of interest in Nick Chubb. I always hate how much he absolutely could
Anthony
be their
Anthony is
catch.
like if he's driving, like
Yeah,
he might have just driven off the road or something.
crashed. Yeah, which would be great. I mean, it's weird because like the reason I like him in tournaments always, and it should be, it's like, yeah, he has no receiving really upside, which stinks, but he is so capable more than most, like except like Derrick Henry maybe, and he's not on the slate of just going nuclear. I mean, what didn't last week? I feel like no one really cares, but didn't he rush like 140 yards or something? I mean, like
Yeah,
like
he
just
rushed for
has
140, but Kareem Hunt scored 2 touchdowns, so no one's really
exactly.
talking about. But what if Hunt or what if Chubb scored even one of those? Like more people would
Exact
be
no,
talking
literally.
about it.
It's like he put up what? So like he put up DK points. I mean, what did he put up? That would be like uh 18, or he put up like 15 or something without scoring and without any catching. Like it just and because the ownership, because or the ownership because of that is always so low, I like him. Did you already mention, sorry if I missed it, but did you mention James Conner?
I did not. I think he's definitely interesting too, especially in that game. Once again, last week
He
that was the guy that
he's
no
getting
one was
some
looking.
buzz. Exactly. Like he's getting some buzz, but I mean, I don't know, he's kind of the guy. Like I know Kyler can steal stuff, like like a Lamar, but James Conner just like gets a lot of touches. He had 6 targets. Uh, I mean, I'm just in terms of like opportunities now, and I like to use weighted opportunities. He just gets a lot of work, and it's not like, I mean, the big thing about like the last week was all like the passing and Devontae Adams, but I mean, it's not like the Raiders' run D looked too stout. So I think James Conner's especially because he could be owned, but I just think people be so much more interested in someone like, putting Carr with Devontae Adams and then running it back with Marquise Brown, where it's like James Conner might be not overlooked, but just not played as much. Um, the other guy I would say if we're going down is I actually make a note on Ben. Have you seen anything about is Najee going to play like for sure?
He says he's playing, so
Okay, I was only just
yeah.
saying because I just was gonna want to make a note that like Jalen Warren, that his backup, who was the only one who took snaps last week, he's like the bare min on OwnersBox, so that would be kind of like a lock for me if Najee were to miss or be limited or something. But I like so I like James Conner. I don't know. I kind of want to play um I want to play Chase Edmonds. I think it's interesting. I liked his usage. It's just tough for me, and I kind of wanted your opinion on. I'm seeing him get. I have him like 10% right now, and things can change. But Baltimore, I mean, low key, they kind of got like waxed by both the running backs against the Jets last week. Yeah, maybe they were kind of up and whatever, but I mean, running backs combined for like 28 points against them, and they each had like several targets. And so I think that's an attractive thing. Where 5,200, I think Chase Edmonds does have upside for a 20 or 25 point game. So I think he's interesting in tournaments. And the last one would be um, it's more of a question for you. Are you interested in playing either of Brees Hall or Michael Carter, or are you kind of fading both?
Yeah,
Because
I
I
don't.
think Michael Carter is kind of interesting.
Yeah, Carter seems to be the guy at least early on. I probably don't make
Mm-hmm.
enough teams to get there, but
Mm-hmm.
if I was gonna play one of them, it would be him. I think both backs in the Miami game are interesting, assuming J.K. Dobbins plays. Because I think he's going to. I don't know if they'll like limit him.
Yeah, see, that's my problem though. It's like you have him, you have Lamar, you have Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill, who I just found out recently is still on an NFL roster. It's like they just have so many running backs.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, last week I was going to ask you about that because we didn't really talk about Lamar at quarterback, which obviously he's always in play, but it does kind of seem, at least based off last week, to me that he didn't want to run, and he's probably going to continue that because he didn't sign that contract, so he's playing,
Mm-hmm.
without a deal. So it would make sense that he doesn't really want to run around a lot. Um, I don't know if they're going to limit Dobbins if he plays though. Like to me, if he
Yeah, I don't
plays,
either.
why wouldn't like they already held him out 1 week. So if he's not 100% like good to go, I don't see why they would just let him play at all. Like there would be no point in then saying like, all right, let's make him active, but he's only going to get like, 6 carries or something. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think he's interesting if he's in. I think Chase Edmonds is definitely interesting at
I mean, dude, I
5,200.
mean, I know you kind of open with it. I mean, I'd be remiss and I'd feel like a fraud if I didn't mention. I mean, I'm absolutely playing CMC again. I don't really. He had like the absolute like nothing game last week because I guess they forgot that he's the best running back in the league. But
Well, they had like
like
they
he's
ran like
still,
no plays in the first half. I
yeah.
swear
I don't
they
know
went
what. Yeah,
three
I
and
don't know
out
if they
like
just like,
4 times in a row.
yeah. I was wondering about that too. I didn't I wasn't actually watching the game. I was curious. I was like, did Carolina just did it get to them? They just said pass. Like, no, we don't want to run. I don't know what the deal was there, but yeah, his usage is just still the same. The opportunities are the same. So we all know what he can do, and if he's going to be not 20% owned, then that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really low owned, to be honest. I don't see people getting to him much, at least how I've been building early, but we'll see on the weekend. We can head over to receiver. We'll talk about some more stuff here at the end, but where are you going at receiver? I think cash games like Devontae for sure, and then the 5 to like 6K tier on DraftKings is so loaded. Like I don't know what to I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I mean it's absolutely insane. There's so many guys you can play in that range that you could come on here and I could name 3 guys and then you could name 2 other guys and I would be like, yeah, like you could sell me on that for sure. But what are you
Yeah, I
doing
feel
at
like you were
receiver?
joking. I feel like you were joking yesterday, and it's so true. I was like, I wish I could play like 6 to 7 receivers in this slate and just skip the running back. I mean, there's so many good ones. So for cash, you mentioned. I mean, yeah, Devontae. I don't really see myself getting away from him because he's just not one of those guys where like we're overreacting to one game. It's more like we're reacting to him being exactly who he was in Green Bay. So I think that one's good. I am really interested in, and again, this is not like a unowned guy, but Amon St. Brown, uh, love to see it. He's a stud. I will definitely play him in tournaments, even though it's hard to trust Goff. Um, the guys that I guess who are a little bit lower owned, and then I'll kind of go to the cheaper cash ones, is I do really like, especially people are just reacting to the touchdown lines and everything like that. I really prefer Cortland Sutton at $500 more. I think 5 to 7% less owned. Um, he didn't like if you just kind of like I know that he didn't score like Jerry Judy did and everything like that, but I mean his share of air yards was higher. They ran about the same route or the same amount of routes, and I mean although it's annoying, it seems like it's going to be a Russ situation in Denver, similar to Lockett and Metcalf, where they both could go off, but they normally just cannibalize each other. So I'll take Sutton in terms of trying to pay up to be contrarian. The other guy I would mention is I have some interest if, for instance, Swift plays and there's is some buzz around Detroit. I'm not saying this like a lock and load, but DJ Chark, he did catch that touchdown, which inflates his points, but he was getting red zone looks. He actually ran more routes than Amon St. Brown did, and he wasn't pass blocking at all, and he's only 5,100, and I mean, I don't think it's the worst play given that he's clearly involved in this offense and we expect Detroit to be struggling and or down or both. Um, and the last guy that I'll play even at his ownership, but I think is a great cash play and tournaments, I'm definitely going to play Greg Dortch at 35, especially if Rondale misses. He looked like he was like a pretty solid, like him and his repertoire with Kyle looked pretty good. 9 targets. And again, like I was saying at the top, I just don't think the Raiders defense is really going to stop anyone. So those are kind of the guys I like as core plays slash cash. I don't want to take all
Yeah.
the guys, Ben. So you can go.
No. So as far as injury stuff at receiver, we have to watch Tampa Bay. So it's Thursday, and I think Mike Evans still did not practice today. Julio Jones did not practice today. Russell Gage did
Interesting.
get back to practice today. So I brought up in Discord earlier, like, what if like Godwin and Julio both were out? Like that would definitely bump Russell Gage up for me. He's 4,800. Before I give
Mm-hmm.
like some more guys that I like, I wanted to ask about Mike Evans because I feel like, assuming he's all good to go, whatever, he's 6,800 and he's projecting to be the second or third highest owned receiver on the slate, assuming because Godwin is out and people know that. But at the same time, the Sunday morning lineup makers, as we like to call them, the casual people that are, they're not really grinding, they're
Mm-hmm.
just making lineups. I feel like the narrative is known that Mike Evans struggles against the Saints. He's never had,
Yeah,
like,
is it Lattimore? Is it Lattimore that owns him for some
yeah,
reason?
yeah, for whatever reason. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's like a known thing. So I was assuming like, even if he's projecting well, like the average person that's just building a lineup like would not put Mike Evans in there. So I wanted your thoughts on Mike Evans before I like dive more into receiver here.
Yeah, I like Evans. And he obviously has this mega ceiling and he catches like apparently a touchdown every week. But I would say I would only probably play him as part of a stack. I probably wouldn't play him by himself because I think that, like you said, there has been, I mean, Brady has that weird thing against the Saints. That's such a narrative, so I wouldn't like shy away from it. But Evans is so boomer bust that I would rather play him as part of a stack with Brady, which I think it'll be much less popular to play Brady, a pocket passer, expensive, much less owned to play, Evans and then another guy or whomever, rather than just playing Evans by himself. But I wouldn't prioritize Evans to answer it a different way, in that I would just rather play Terry or Amon St. Brown for cheaper, all lower ownership, or just go up to like, Ty Scum or pay up that way. I just don't think Evans for me, he doesn't seem like a have to have it this week, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I prefer Tyreek at 71 to Evans at 68, I think. I mean, Tyreek Hill, ton of targets last week. Like we said, the Dolphins, I said it on the Sunday stream. I don't remember if Anthony asked or someone in chat. Somebody asked about the Dolphins, and I was like, they're not going to be owned. And the general consensus is that the Dolphins are going to run the football a lot because there was like a quote from the summer where Mike McDaniel had said something about like wanting to run 30 plus times a game because he's like that Shanahan style play caller. But
Mhm.
they threw the ball like more than anybody, in neutral game scripts over the weekend. Tyreek Hill, 44% share of the Dolphins' air yards. Like him and Waddle just got fed. So I prefer Tyreek
Totally.
over Evans. I think the ceiling is much higher on Tyreek, I think.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention not, and they also were not like they were pushing the pace the whole time. My
Yeah.
dusty team, the Patriots. I mean, they just weren't really doing anything. So I agree. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I was referencing to you before, and I've been trying to use it more as like, expected fantasy points versus actual. I mean, Tyreek had a fine game, and he like underperformed relative to kind of what he probably should have or could have. So
Yeah.
we know he's explosive. So my only thing is, I will, if Tyreek were to creep up and like get higher ownership, I probably wouldn't play him. I'd probably just play one of the guys around him. But which makes me curious. I'm shocked that Debo is not getting more buzz just because of Eli Mitchell being hurt.
Yeah.
You've
And
got to assume that funnels more into his hands,
yeah,
right?
and Lance is going to be like pretty high owned, I would say. And it's not like
Mm-hmm.
Lance is someone you need to stack with because he runs the ball so much. But I mean, Debo is the guy that you would want to stack him with. And with Mitchell out, to like Matt's point, he had sent something in Discord. Like he's probably gonna get goal line carries, like when they do those design runs for Debo. And he's probably just gonna get more rush attempts in general. So I do think Debo's interesting. I'm gonna get into this 5K tier in a minute, but I want to ask you. So there's three guys that all project similarly and similar ownership, and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hollywood Brown, and Tyreek Hill. So like if you're, and I think like you could play one of those guys in cash even with Adams. So like
Mm-hmm.
who are you picking of those three guys?
For me, if I'm picking one, I would pick Amon St. Brown. If I was ranking him, uh, I'd go Brown, then Hill, or Amon St. Brown, then Hill, then Hollywood. Just because I feel like Hollywood's range of outcomes is so much wider. Uh, and I know like Hopkins isn't there, everything, they have these injuries, but he's still, at least per last week, is still kind of maintaining that higher A dot, and so he just seems like, at least for cash, more boom or bust. And it just seems like Amon St. Brown just is like so clearly the number one option for Jared Goff, as he should be. Um, and yeah, Tyreek is like that, but Tyreek is just A, he's a scumbag, but B, he just I feel like I just don't have any handle on how the Dolphins are really going to be like doing things. I mean, we saw him pass a lot, but are they just going to start using like their six running backs? Like I have really no idea. So I would feel probably the most comfortable with Amon St. Brown.
Yeah, I probably agree for cash, but it's a conversation. I love St. Brown. I wanted to play him last week. I didn't for like my main team, but
Me too.
he's such a good play, um, especially in this game. So all right, in that 5 to 6K tier, I think how I don't want to say how I would rank guys, but like guys that I really really like in that tier are Christian Kirk. I think sticks out probably above everyone. Like, he might be my favorite guy in that tier. And then T. Higgins, who is questionable. I didn't mention that when I was talking about the injury at this position, but if he plays, I think he's definitely in play at 5,900. That feels way too cheap.
Absolutely, way too cheap.
Yeah, that
Completely
seems
agree.
like just a dumb price tag. And then if he's out, I mean, that would bump up Chase. I feel like Chase and Cooper Kupp and Debo, I guess to an extent, like those are the lower owned like spend up guys off of Adams that I think you could look at in tournaments or maybe try and get one of them with Adams in your lineup. But I think Christian Kirk, I think, is my favorite guy. Obviously, like Trevor Lawrence, first of all, they paid him all that money, right? And everyone was like, "Why would you give Christian Kirk all that money?" But to their justification, at least they are using him. Trevor Lawrence threw him the ball 8 times in that last preseason game that they played together, and it was only like a half of game time. And then week 1 obviously saw a ton of targets again. He's playing in the slot, which is where we like to target Indy with how they scheme their defense. I infamously liked Brevin Jordan last week. And what happened? I mean, OJ Howard comes out of nowhere.
How'd that work out?
Scores 2 touchdowns.
OJ Howard went back to his college days and just went full
dead. Yeah, that was just absurd. But I think Christian Kirk's a really good play. I prefer him to like DJ Moore or Deontay. Cortland Sutton, I think, is a great call by you. I like him a lot too. He's top 5 or 6 in air yards in week 1. He got a couple like deep like end zone looks, and I brought this up in Discord too. People playing Showdown. But the Seahawks have that rookie corner that they really like, Tariq Woolen, and he's 6'4" and like extremely fast, like one of the fastest 40s for a DB at the combine this past year. I haven't dug in exactly to like Cortland Sutton's matchup, but I'm gonna go on a limb and guess that the Texans don't have a 6'4" corner that can like body for body matchup. Assumption. Yeah, I mean that's like an outlier. So not every team is gonna have someone that can body up Cortland Sutton, and like one of the deep shots that they took to him, like Tariq Woolen like just held him because like he was gonna get beat. So
he's like, I'm gonna get beat. I'm just gonna hold you.
Yeah. So I think Sutton's a really good play again, and I don't think he's gonna be owned. I think more people will play Judy because he's cheaper. I don't know what to make of the Tampa guys. We'll have to wait and see on the injury news there. Michael Thomas, what are you making of him? I mean,
what I'm making of him is why in the hell is he 5,800 again?
Yeah, it's just too cheap. It's just too cheap for sure.
What are we doing, dude? I get that he's like not the same, but like, what are we doing? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Can I make? I'll give a bad take here potentially, but if you're talking about Jax, I think if there's a guy you talk about expected fantasy points and not come to fruition. Zay Jones saw 9 targets last week. And I know Lawrence has thrown to him in the preseason, #team preseason, and it seems like that's continued. We're kind of mentioning a lot of Jax guys, which is hilarious because the team sucks. But Zay Jones is, I think, the definition of a play because he is so capable of a 0, but he's also could go for 100. And, he was actually playing out of the slot last week a lot, which I thought was interesting. But that was just one name. Sorry, when you're mentioning the Jax guys, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. I think I prefer Jahan Dotson, so we can move down to this lower, like 4 to 5K.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like coming into the week, like when I did the cash process and then just talking in Discord early on, like, I kind of thought Jahan Dotson would be chalky because he scored 2 touchdowns last week. He ran a route on every dropback except for 2, I think. And like it was reported all offseason that like that was Carson Wentz's guy, which it's easy to like assume that because the one thing he did at Penn State was he would get separation, he would get open, and that is obviously going to transfer to the NFL. So I kind of thought he was going to be chalky. He's not projecting for much ownership at all. I think he's a really good play. So I think if I was spending in that 4K tier, I would probably lean towards Dotson, but like Russell Gage would get a bump up for me if like Julio also missed or something like that.
Yeah, I liked Russell Gage coming in just because obviously anyone who's getting the ball from Tom Brady should be considered. I think week
he led the Bucs in yards per route run last week.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. The same thing. Yeah, I don't know if that's sustainable, but I thought he's interesting. I mean, I mentioned to you yesterday. I think how do you pronounce his name? Is it Joel? The guy in San Francisco. Is it Jawan? I don't know how do you pronounce that guy's name on San
Jawan
Francisco?
Johnson.
No, Jawan Jennings.
Oh, Jennings. Yeah.
Nah, he's another complete deep shot. It's only a deep shot.
Okay, so wait. someone that you brought up to me before this was Curtis Samuel, and I was kind of just talking about Dotson. So I think Samuel will probably be higher owned, even though I thought Dotson was gonna be chalk. But what do you think of like Curtis Samuel?
I mean, hard to argue with the targets. I think he had what, like 11 targets last week. I think he's a interesting and honestly, all things considered, a strong cash play. I mean, I think he saw like a third of the team's red zone targets. He has like this short A dot thing. I just don't. It's hard to say what his upside is in terms of like a tournament winning upside, but and it's also if we trust Carson Wentz, which it's hard to. But I mean, he ran. I think he ran like 85%, or he had 85% of his snaps. He ran a route last week. He is clearly involved in the offense, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that Detroit's not really stopping anybody. So I'm fine with him in cash. I just don't really have any interest in him in tournaments. Like, actually, I'll be honest. I actually would probably, with only $400 difference, I would probably play him over Dotson, just because there's more maybe stability. I think they're both fine.
Okay.
I think you prefer Dotson.
Yeah, and then I don't see like a ton of value here. You mentioned Dortch. If Rondale Moore misses, Dortch will be in my. I don't want to say I'll play him in cash, but he'll definitely be in consideration for me. And then I think for
And are we going back to Richie James Jr.?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that. I think I think Pickens is interesting at 36. Like he played a lot, he just didn't do anything. Like at some point he's probably gonna do something, right?
Yeah, he ran a route of 95% of Mitch's dropbacks. So, I mean, we're gonna get to it. I actually much prefer in that game their tight end, but the only other guy I mean, Ben, if you in terms of punts, I think I was mentioning to you and Matt that I think that the spread, I think, is a complete overreactionary one for the Dallas-Cincy game. I think Dallas is like 7.5-point dogs. I get Cooper Rush is not good, and that's a bit of a downgrade from Dak, but it's not like they're completely incompetent. And with these injuries, do you have any interest in taking a shot in any of these Dallas guys? Like I think didn't Noah Brown have like 8 or 9 targets last week? I mean, some of those are from Dak, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
I think for like large field, you could probably sell me on that, but like
Yeah, I just
I
didn't
would
know if
rather
it's too thin.
I would rather play Pickens. I think if I was gonna play a cheap guy, because it's not like Pickens is gonna be owned at all.
What about Ben? We
Wait, what'd you say?
I said DPJ, the People's
Oh
Jones.
yeah,
Are you in or
yeah.
are you out?
I don't know. I mean, the Browns are just like they're not going to pass the ball a ton while Jacoby Brissett is their
Yeah,
quarterback. But I mean,
as they shouldn't.
he's clearly the number 2 receiver. The problem is like I thought David Njoku was gonna get more targets and he just didn't. I haven't like looked into like why. I know he was blocking more than I thought, but I do think like at some point like they're gonna try and get the ball to Njoku. But yeah, I think that
Yeah,
pretty much
I guess
does
it
it.
depends. I mean, like I don't. This may be more qualitative, but I mean, like, can Jacoby throw deep? Really? I know that's like what a lot of People's Jones like does, but I don't really
Yeah.
know if
I
Brissett
don't know.
even
They're
can
they're
throw deep.
from watching the game, there was guys like wide open for the Browns and Jacoby Brissett was just missing them. So I don't know if it was like timing cuz he didn't play a lot in the preseason, or I don't know if he's just like actually that
He's
bad.
like, no.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'll probably be avoiding the Browns passing game, I guess, for the time being here. But we can head over to tight end. I think in terms of like cash games, DraftKings kind of skews more to the cheap tight end, and then FanDuel you can kind of spend up a little bit more. Like, I mean, Kyle Pitts was 60+% owned on FanDuel last week. He didn't do anything. He had a ton of air yards, a ton of expected fantasy points again. That's kind of the name of the game for Kyle Pitts so far in his career is that he should be doing all these great things, but it just hasn't happened yet. I'm going to keep buying into that, though. I think he's fine in tournaments. Cash pool for me, DraftKings tight end is probably like Albert O at 37. I think is interesting. And then honestly, Matt, I could see. So speaking of Jawan Johnson, who I
Yeah, let's
definitely
do it.
mentioned
Let's do it.
at
Yeah, let's go.
receiver,
Let's
but
do it. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
Matt kind of like sold me on it in Discord just because he did run so many routes, and then that report came out that he's like pulling away at the tight end position, and that he played over Troutman and these guys late, Nick Vannett, but. I'm fine with it at 2,500 because you don't need to do much for like cash games. Like I think that's completely fine. tournaments, I probably wouldn't play him, but I will say I could see him kind of getting like steamed a little bit. Like, not that he's going to be chalk, but I could see him being like 8 to 10 instead of like 3% that he
Hmm.
probably should be.
Yeah, and that's just like my rule with a guy like that is totally good in cash, but like I don't ever play. I normally try to stack my tight end with my QB anyway, but I wouldn't play him like just alone. I think that's kind of a negative EV thing, is to like punt totally. Um, dude, yeah, Juwan Johnson. I mean, he ran. I mean, first of all, he was playing out of the slot, which like so. Okay, so he ran 32 routes on 34 dropbacks, and he played out of the slot for like 2/3 of those, which is interesting and also disappointing because that was what I was hoping Kamara should and would be doing, but he wasn't. But yeah, that's interesting, and I think that, with Michael Thomas still making his way back, I mean, who's there? If Dusty Landry, who actually I played last week, he did pretty well, but I think he's a really interesting option, especially against a Tampa Bay defense where I presume that maybe call for more short throws and maybe Taysom Hill can fuck off for once, but
Yeah,
that remains to be seen.
dude, speaking of that, on FanDuel, I think Taysom Hill is like the third or fourth highest priced tight end on FanDuel, I think.
FanDuel remains just lost, completely lost. They don't understand what they're doing.
I will mention, speaking of Taysom Hill, like, he's cheap on OwnersBox.
Yeah, I was gonna mention.
If you want to play Taysom Hill on OwnersBox, he's only 4,500.
Yep. Yeah, he's Yeah, I was looking at him earlier. I mean, where is he on this? Yeah, he's like one of the cheapest guys, which I thought was a little bit random. I mean, other guys that I think are interesting. Not to cut you off, but I think Pat Fryermuth saw 10 targets last week, which is his yards per route run was like 2.4. He was kind of popping off. And that makes sense because Trubisky, I think, throws a little shorter. I like Fryermuth a lot. I like Higbee. He clearly like picked up the slack of when they're missing Van. I think he's getting some buzz, but I think he's a really strong play. And then I was talking to you, Matt. I love Hayden Hurst. I'd like him more if Higgins is out, but um he was on the field a lot. He was being, again, it was maybe because Higgins was out, but he was running a lot of routes. I think I had him. Yeah, I mean, he ran some of the most routes of anyone because of the game, but I think he ran nearly a 90% clip. He saw, what was it, 6 or 7 targets, and I think that he is someone who I don't really see ever getting more than like 5% owned, but those are probably the guys that go besides the obvious ones.
Yeah, the only other guy I would add into that, I think, is, oh, I mean, obviously, like, Andrews is fine in tournaments always. Like, we don't really need to say that, but I think you could maybe look at Zach Ertz. I know he was like questionable coming into last week, but he ended up playing like a good bit. I believe he scored as well, but that game is just so good, and like him and Connor, I think, are going to be like the lower owned pieces of that game. If you're playing like a car team and you want to run back, like, instead of just using the obvious Hollywood Brown or Dortch if Rondell's out, just use Zach Ertz instead or something like that.
Yeah. I also will say, I mean, I feel like he's kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of people. I'll definitely go back to Darren Waller. I mean,
I think
we just watched.
Carr like missed him last week too. I think he probably should have
Yeah,
had a
he did.
touchdown. Yeah.
He did. I mean, I mean, I'm not saying that they're the exact same, but similar, upside. I mean, we just saw them get shredded by the KC tight ends. So
Yeah.
again, I know Devontae is the guy, but like Waller, I think is still interesting as part of stacks, things like that.
Yeah. So that covers all the positions. Before we head out of here, Sam, what are some of the top stacks that you're considering for, like your 3 max or those types of contests?
So besides removing the obvious of the Arizona Vegas game, that should be the most popular. I think the only way to get leverage on that is honestly just to stack the Arizona side, or just not use Adams, which is a scary proposition. But I think the most interesting one for me is the Rams, like full, like a passing attack stack. Not that Cup is going to be low owned, he's not, but the direct leverage off of Darrell Henderson and, either using, I would probably go like Stafford, Cup, and Higbee, or Stafford, Cup, and A-Rob, or A-Rob and Higbee or something. And then, picking a guy where I was a little more interested in Cordell Patterson the beginning of the week, but I was looking more into it. I didn't realize that Damian Williams, I think, was supposed to be getting the start, but then got hurt. That's why Cordell played so much. So I don't know how I feel about that. But just running it back with someone like Pitts or Drake London, I think would be an interesting way to not going to be low owned, but I think if you consider like the cumulative ownership of taking Stafford is expensive and then Cup another guy instead of Henderson is there's obviously upside there. And then the other one I would say would be assuming he's healthy. I saw he was like on the injury report again. Is just the New Orleans side of the Tampa game. And those games have been slogs and they've been kind of weird. It's divisional, but I mean, I stacked up Jameis last week and it worked out pretty well with Michael Thomas and Landry. This week, I mean, I love going. I mean, Juwan's literally the min, and pairing him with Michael Thomas or one of the other guys is not that expensive. And the Bucks D is good, but it's definitely beatable. So I think those are kind of, for me, interesting non-chalk stacks, chalk-ish.
Yeah. I think for me, like I said, I really like Russ stacks this week. And they'll be probably low owned because that Arizona game's in the same, they're both afternoon games, and I think that's
Russ
where
is still expensive
most
too.
people, yeah, and he's expensive. So I like that. I like Tua a little bit as well. I think that's about it. I think for like stacks. What's a bold call for me? For my bold call this week for week 2, I'm gonna go with Marcus Mariota outscores Trey Lance. That's my bold call.
I like that one. Damn, that was a fun one. Yeah, take a second, but I normally give some terrible take that's not going to happen. But that was a
I
good
feel like
one.
normally my bold calls are like the dumbest thing, but I actually think that could happen, to be honest.
No, your bold calls, they either hit in like the first quarter or they don't hit at all.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
first
very
drive of the game, like it's gonna be like
accurate.
it's gonna be like a Marcus Mariota like 95-yard run. You're gonna be like, all
Yeah,
right, let's go.
that is true.
I'm gonna say that man, this is a tough one for me because I have all these guys who I'm obsessed with. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do 1A and 1B because one of them shouldn't actually be hot, but I'm gonna say number 1, Christian McCaffrey is the highest scoring player in the slate, which should be a hotter take normally, or it's a hotter take now just because he had one bad game, so that means he stinks. My actual bold call is going to be that Chase Edmonds is a top 5 scoring running back this week.
I like it. I like it. If you've watched the video this long, thank you guys. Please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and be sure to check out OwnersBox Fantasy Sports. We kind of Travis did a YouTube video. You can see it on the channel as well on how he won $9,000 over the weekend, week 1 on Lightning lineups. Promo code Karma not only gets you that $500 deposit match, but it also gets you a free $10 entry to use on Lightning lineups. You can use it for Thursday Night Football if you're watching this Thursday in the day. You can use it for week 1 of NFL. You can use it on MLB if you want to do that. But thank you guys for watching, and good luck this week. We will see you guys on the Sunday morning stream.